It is a name whispered for millennia, a ghost on the lips of history. Atlantis. Was it a real empire, ruled by demigods who harnessed powers we can only dream of? Or was it the greatest philosophical fable ever told, a cautionary tale lost to the currents of time? For over 2,000 years, this single question has haunted explorers, mesmerized historians, and fueled the dreams of mystics. It has launched 1,000 expeditions, inspired countless books, and carved its name into the very bedrock of our collective imagination. Tonight, we dive deep, deeper than the crushing pressures of the abyss, deeper than the layers of myth and legend. We journey back to the source, to the mind of the man who first gave the legend breath. We will sift through the sands of time, examining the most compelling scientific theories, from volcanic islands buried in the Aegean to strange circular formations in the heart of the Sahara. We will ask the hard questions. What did Plato truly mean? And why, after centuries of searching, does Atlantis refuse to be found? The truth may be far stranger than fiction. What if the city wasn't just lost? What if history deliberately tried to forget it? Join us as we hunt for the real Atlantis. Our story begins not in the depths of the ocean, but in the sun-drenched agora of ancient Athens in the 4th century BCE. The world of philosophy was dominated by one towering figure, Plato. He was a student of Socrates, a teacher to Aristotle, a man whose ideas would shape the course of Western thought. And in 2 of his later works, the dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he unveiled a story so vivid, so detailed, that it has been mistaken for history ever since. The tale is told through the voice of Critias, who recounts a story passed down from his great-grandfather, who heard it from the Athenian statesman Solon, who, in turn, learned it from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. This chain of transmission was crucial. Plato was framing his story not as an invention, but as a long-lost piece of historical record. According to these priests, 9,000 years before their time, a date that would place Atlantis in the Stone Age, around 9600 BCE, a mighty empire existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. This was Atlantis, a naval power of unprecedented scale, an island continent larger than Libya and Asia combined. From this seat of power, its kings had extended their rule across North Africa, into Egypt, and across Europe as far as Italy. But Atlantis was more than just a military force. It was a utopia, a city engineered by the gods themselves. Plato's description is breathtaking in its precision. The capital city was a marvel of concentric circles, 3 of water, 2 of land, created by Poseidon, the god of the sea, to protect his mortal love, Cleito. Bridges connected the land rings, and a massive canal, 50 stades long, cut a path directly to the open sea, allowing triremes and merchant ships to sail into the city's heart. The land was rich beyond measure. The soil produced 2 harvests a year. Elephants roamed the plains, and deep within the earth, miners extracted a mysterious, glittering metal, orichalcum, which Plato describes as second only to gold in value, flashing with a red light. The walls of the city were coated in it, the temples gleaming under the sun. At the center, on the original hill, stood a magnificent temple dedicated to Poseidon, its interior lined with silver, its pinnacles with gold, and its roof with solid ivory. The Atlanteans themselves were descended from Poseidon and his 10 sons, demigods who ruled with wisdom and virtue. For generations they lived in harmony, their laws just, their spirits noble. They despised everything but virtue, Plato wrote, caring little for their present state of life and thinking lightly of the possession of gold and other property. But this golden age was not to last. As the divine blood thinned over generations, human nature began to assert itself. Arrogance replaced humility, greed supplanted virtue. Filled with unrighteous avarice and power, they forgot the wisdom of their ancestors. They became corrupt, decadent, and hungry for conquest. And so they launched their final, fatal campaign, an invasion of the Mediterranean, aimed at enslaving all of Athens and the known world. But here, Plato introduces a counterpoint to Atlantean corruption, a heroic ancient Athens, an idealized city-state, virtuous and brave, that stood alone against the tide. This ancient Athens, Plato's true protagonist, repelled the Atlantean horde and liberated the peoples they had conquered. The gods watching from above saw the fall of their chosen people. Zeus, the king of the gods, gathered the pantheon to pass judgment, and his judgment was absolute. The end came without warning. Plato's words are chilling. But afterwards there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis, in like manner, disappeared in the depths of the sea. And then, silence. The story ends, unfinished. Atlantis was gone, swallowed by the ocean, leaving behind only a layer of impassable mud and a legend that would echo for eternity.
Plato had planted a seed, but did he intend for it to grow into a forest of speculation? The first person to question the story was, ironically, his own most brilliant student, Aristotle. A man of science and logic, Aristotle saw no evidence, no corroborating accounts. His conclusion was simple and cutting. He who invented it also destroyed it. To Aristotle, Atlantis was a noble lie, a philosophical tool, a fictional setting created to explore ideas of justice, hubris, and the ideal state. For most of antiquity, Aristotle's view prevailed. While the story was known to scholars, there are no records of Roman or Greek geographers mounting expeditions to find the lost continent in the Atlantic. The Roman Empire, pragmatic and focused on the tangible, treated Atlantis as literature, not as a destination. As Rome fell, and the Dark Ages descended upon Europe, Plato's texts became rare treasures, preserved in the libraries of monasteries and the burgeoning Islamic world. The story of Atlantis slept, a footnote in a forgotten dialogue. Its reawakening came with the Renaissance, as scholars in Florence and beyond rediscovered the classical texts of Greece. Plato's dialogues were translated and disseminated with the help of the new printing press. The story of Atlantis was reborn, and it entered a world buzzing with a new spirit of discovery. This was the age of exploration. Columbus had sailed west and found not a path to India, but a new world. Suddenly, the idea of a vast, unknown landmass in the west didn't seem so fanciful. Could the Americas be Atlantis? Or perhaps its surviving colonies? Thinkers like Francis Bacon, in his 1627 novel The New Atlantis, used the myth as a framework for his own vision of a scientific utopia. The story was becoming a vessel for new ideas about science, politics, and humanity's past. But it was still largely confined to the realm of philosophy and literature. It would take one man, centuries later, to drag Atlantis out of the library and place it firmly on the world map. A man who would turn a philosophical fable into a global obsession.
For over 2,200 years, Atlantis remained a curiosity for scholars. Then, in 1882, everything changed. The man responsible was Ignatius Donnelly, a former U.S. congressman from Minnesota, an amateur scientist, and a writer with a flair for the dramatic. His book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, was a sensation. It wasn't written for academics, it was written for everyone, and it made a breathtaking claim. Atlantis was real, and it was the mother of all civilizations. Donnelly's method was simple, yet seductive. He took Plato's account as literal fact and then scoured the world's mythologies and archaeological records for connections, no matter how tenuous. He argued that similarities between ancient, geographically distant cultures, like the pyramids of Egypt and the pyramids of Mesoamerica, or flood myths from Babylon and the Bible, were not coincidences. They were proof of a shared origin, a single, highly advanced mother culture that had been destroyed in a global cataclysm. That mother culture was Atlantis. He proposed that a few survivors, a class of culture bearers, had escaped the sinking continent in ships, spreading to the far corners of the world and seeding the civilizations of Egypt, the Maya, the Inca, and ancient Europe. They brought with them agriculture, metallurgy, architecture, and religion. In Donnelly's vision, all of human history was a faint echo of this one glorious, lost civilization. His book was a runaway bestseller. He presented his arguments with such passion and conviction that millions of people were convinced. He had given them a grand, romantic, and unified theory of the past. He had made history a mystery story, and Atlantis was the missing clue. But Donnelly's work also opened a door to a much stranger world. His ideas were seized upon by the burgeoning occult and theosophical movements of the late 19th century. Figures like Madame Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, integrated Atlantis into their mystical cosmology. She wrote of ancient root races, of spiritual evolution, and of other lost continents like Lemuria in the Pacific. Atlantis was no longer just a lost city, but a home for super beings with psychic powers, a pivotal chapter in a cosmic spiritual drama. This turn towards the mystical had a profound effect. It permanently linked Atlantis in the public mind with fringe theories, psychic channels, and paranormal phenomena. While this made the story more popular than ever, it also pushed it further away from the world of mainstream science and archaeology. The hunt for Atlantis was now split in two: a serious, if speculative, historical inquiry, and a full-blown occult fantasy. And that division continues to this day, as we see in the most compelling modern theories.
Plato gave us a location beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He gave us a date, 9,000 years before his time, and he gave us a description, concentric rings of land and water. For centuries, these clues have been the treasure map for seekers of the lost city. The problem? They point in a dozen different directions. Out of countless theories, 5 have risen above the rest, capturing the imagination of both scientists and amateur sleuths. Our first stop is not in the Atlantic, but in the heart of the Mediterranean. Welcome to the Greek island of Santorini. Theory 1. The Minoan Hypothesis. Today, Santorini is a paradise of whitewashed villages and stunning sunsets. But 3,600 years ago, around 1600 BCE, it was the site of one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in human history. The island, then known as Thera, was home to a thriving outpost of the Minoan civilization. The Minoans, based on the nearby island of Crete, were a true naval power. Their art was sophisticated, their cities unfortified, suggesting they controlled the seas, and their culture was remarkably advanced. Then, the volcano exploded with the force of hundreds of atomic bombs. It blew the center of the island apart, leaving the crescent-shaped caldera we see today. It triggered colossal tsunamis that would have devastated the coast of Crete, the Minoan heartland, just 70 miles away. In a matter of days, the Minoan civilization was crippled, its naval supremacy shattered, its decline set in motion. In the 1960s, archaeologists excavating on Thera discovered the city of Akrotiri, a Minoan settlement buried in volcanic ash, perfectly preserved like a prehistoric Pompeii. The frescoes depict a vibrant society with detailed images of ships, dolphins, and bustling towns. The parallels to Plato's story are striking. A powerful naval empire destroyed by a natural cataclysm, a city that vanished in a short time span. Many scholars believe that this event, the eruption of Thera and the fall of the Minoans, became a distant memory passed down through generations for over 1,000 years, eventually reaching the Egyptian priests who told it to Solon. The details would have become distorted over time. The date, 9,000 years, could have been a mistranslation of 900. The location, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, could have been a metaphor for a place far away. It's a compelling, scientifically grounded theory, but it has problems. The location is wrong. The Aegean is not the Atlantic. The timeline is off by over 8,000 years. And the scale of the Minoan civilization, while impressive, does not match Plato's description of a continent-sized empire. For many, Santorini is a fascinating historical echo, but it is not Atlantis. Theory 2. The Richat Structure. For our next candidate, we travel south to the vast, empty expanse of the Sahara Desert in Mauritania. From the ground, it's an unremarkable landscape, but from space, it is one of the astonishing geological features on Earth, the Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. It is a near-perfect set of concentric rings, 25 miles in diameter. The resemblance to Plato's description of the Atlantean capital is uncanny. The rings, the central island, it's as if someone stamped Plato's blueprint onto the desert floor. This visual similarity, promoted heavily on the internet and television documentaries, has made the Richat structure one of the most popular modern candidates for Atlantis. Proponents argue that 12,000 years ago, during the African humid period, the Sahara was not a desert, but a lush landscape of rivers and lakes. They point to Plato's mention of elephants and multiple harvests as evidence of a fertile environment. Could this structure have been the city, connected to the Atlantic Ocean by a vast, long-vanished river system? The scientific explanation, however, is far more mundane. Geologists are in wide agreement that the Richat structure is a natural formation, a deeply eroded geological dome. Imagine a blister of rock pushed up from below, with layers peeling away like an onion. The rings are simply different layers of resistant rock. And there is one fatal flaw in the theory. the Archaeology. Despite its striking appearance, there is no evidence of a major advanced civilization ever having existed there. There are some scattered Stone Age artifacts, but nothing remotely resembling the grand temples, canals, and walls described by Plato. The Eye of the Sahara is a geological wonder, a magnificent coincidence, but a city of demigods, it is not. Theory 3. Doñana Park, Spain. We return to the most logical search area, just outside the Pillars of Hercules. In the marshlands of Doñana Park National Park in southern Spain, a team of researchers using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar believe they have found evidence of a lost city buried in the mudflats. This region was once a vast inland sea, and it fits Plato's location perfectly. The area was home to the mysterious Tartessian civilization, a wealthy culture known for its metalwork that vanished from history around 2,500 years ago. The researchers have identified strange circular patterns and rectangular shapes beneath the marsh, features they call memorial cities, possibly built by survivors in the image of a larger parent city destroyed by a tsunami. And the geological evidence for a cataclysm is strong. Studies have shown this coastline has been hit by multiple devastating tsunamis over the millennia. A city built here could easily have been wiped out in a single day and night of misfortune. However, the theory remains controversial. Other archaeologists argue the detected shapes could be natural formations or remnants of much later Roman or Moorish salt pans. The evidence is tantalizing, but inconclusive. The mud of Doñana Park holds its secrets tightly, a potential graveyard of a lost civilization waiting for the technology that can finally reveal the truth. Theory 4. The Mid-Atlantic. But what if Plato takes him literally? What if Atlantis was a true mid-ocean continent that sunk beneath the waves? This was the core of Ignatius Donnelly's theory, centered on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive undersea mountain range. Could this be the remnants of the lost landmass? This idea gained traction in the 20th century, particularly with the discovery of the Bimini Road in 1968. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, divers found a remarkable underwater structure, a half-mile-long path of large rectangular limestone blocks looking for all the world like a man-made road or the foundation of a wall. For believers, this was it, physical proof of Atlantean engineering. Once again, science offers a more sober explanation. Geologists have studied the Bimini Road extensively and concluded it is a natural formation known as beach rock. As sand and sediment on a shoreline cement together under certain conditions, they can fracture in remarkably straight geometric patterns, creating the illusion of masonry. Furthermore, modern oceanography and plate tectonics have shown that a large continent can't simply sink in the middle of the ocean. The seafloor spreads, it doesn't collapse. While the idea of a sunken continent is romantic, it defies the known laws of geology. Theory 5. Antarctica. Our final theory is perhaps the most outlandish, yet it persists. What if Atlantis is buried under 2 miles of ice at the South Pole? This idea was popularized by Charles Hapgood in his 1958 book, Earth's Shifting Crust. Hapgood proposed a theory of Earth's crust displacement, suggesting that the entire outer crust of the Earth could sometimes shift in one piece, moving continents into new climate zones. According to this theory, Antarctica was once located in a temperate zone and was home to a great civilization. A sudden crustal shift moved it to the South Pole, where its cities and culture were flash-frozen under the ice sheets. The primary piece of evidence used to support this is the Piri-Reis map, a mysterious 16th century map drawn by a Turkish admiral. The map appears to show the coast of South America with great accuracy and, most controversially, what looks like the coastline of an ice-free Antarctica. But this theory collapses under scrutiny. The scientific consensus is that Earth's crust displacement is geologically impossible.
We have traveled from the Mediterranean to the Sahara, from the depths of the Atlantic to the ice of Antarctica. We have followed the clues, weighed the evidence, and explored the most compelling theories. And yet, after all this searching, Atlantis remains as elusive as ever. So, where does that leave us? The overwhelming academic consensus among 99% of credible historians, archaeologists, and geologists is that Atlantis, as described by Plato, never existed. It is a work of fiction. To understand why, we must return to the man who started it all, Plato. His dialogues were not history textbooks. They were philosophical exercises designed to explore complex ideas about politics, human nature, and justice. Seen in this light, the story of Atlantis transforms. It's not about a lost city. It's about a lost ideal. Many scholars believe Atlantis was a noble lie, a concept Plato himself endorsed, a myth created by a ruler to inspire virtue in the citizenry. His true purpose was to hold up a mirror to his own society. He invented a perfect ancient Athens, brave, virtuous, and self-sacrificing, and pitted it against the corrupt, arrogant, and wealthy empire of Atlantis. The story was a warning to his fellow Athenians, whose own democracy had grown corrupt and imperialistic. Atlantis was a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the greatest of powers can be brought down by moral decay. So, if it's just a story, why can't we let it go? Why, for 2,400 years, have we been so determined to believe? Perhaps the answer lies not in history, but in psychology. The myth of Atlantis speaks to a profound human yearning for a lost golden age, a time when humanity was greater, wiser, and more in tune with the universe. It represents the tantalizing possibility that our ancestors were not primitive, but possessed a forgotten high technology and a deeper spiritual wisdom. It's the ultimate what-if of human history. In a world that often feels chaotic and mundane, the idea of Atlantis offers magic. It suggests that the world is older, more mysterious, and more wondrous than we know. It whispers that just beyond the edge of our maps, there are still secrets to be found. In the end, the true legacy of Atlantis is not a physical location waiting to be discovered on a map. It is an idea, a powerful, enduring myth that reflects our own greatest hopes and deepest fears about civilization, power, and our place in the cosmos. The search for Atlantis is, and always has been, a search for ourselves.